nutritional yeast crackers. They're really yummy if you've never tried them before. This is a recipe that I found online, so I'm going to share my version. And they're a lot like the tomato basil wheat thins if you've ever tried those. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we want to do is have the nutritional yeast, right? If you've never seen it before, you can find it either online and through Amazon. I actually found it cheaper at Walmart, so this is where I purchased this. And I also want to make sure that I get they're more like flakes, okay? So I want to make sure that you get the right kind there. And I'll just throw that back in there. My hands are clean. And then you also want to make sure that you have just a half a cup of water, some sugar, flour, kosher salt, olive oil. And then here's what makes my ingredients a little bit different is I actually went online and I ordered the tomato basil garlic. It's a seasoning. This one is salt-free dash. And then just for extra flavor, I have the sesame seeds. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I went ahead and set my oven for 450. It's preheating now. I'm going to go ahead and add my ingredients to my bowl. So I have 1.5 cups of flour, and keep your flour out because you might need to add some more. Okay, and then I'm going to add the 2 tablespoons of the nutritional yeast. Now this is Bragg's. The recipe that I actually found online had recommended red meal. I haven't tried that, but this was the least expensive for trial purposes anyways, and I actually like it, so I've stuck with it. And again, you want the flakes. This is 2 tablespoons. Now I want 1 teaspoon of sugar. And a half a teaspoon of the kosher salt. And kosher salt, if you've never had it, it's kind of a coarse salt, almost like little granules. Okay, so a half a teaspoon of that. I've kept aside my seasonings because that's going to go on top, so I can just move that over there. I want my olive oil and my water. So I'll go ahead and put my water in first, and the water is a half a cup of water. And then I need a 1/4 cup of the olive oil. And now I'm ready to start mixing. And one thing that I like to do is I like to use, ever since COVID, I had purchased these powder-free latex gloves, and I don't like the way it feels when I start kneading the dough, so I just slip those on. If you've never tried them, try them. You will love them. Just make sure that they're powder-free. I'm just going to go ahead and mix it all up. And you could actually start off with a spoon to mix up the first part of it to get yourself started there. But just go ahead and keep blending it all together, mixing it all up. It's not like regular dough. This dough is not going to rise like if you were using regular yeast. So you're just going to go ahead and just keep stirring it up, mixing it up, massaging it, kneading it. Okay, if you find that it's still too dry, this is not too bad, but I don't want to sit here forever trying to get those last pieces in. So I'm going to add just a little bit more water. And you want it, a doughy texture, kind of like Play-Doh, that kind of something that's going to roll out pretty easy. I might have actually overdone it with the water, so I'll just kind of keep massaging that. I want to make it easy to roll out. If you do find that you put too much water in from the beginning, or if it's too sticky, you can go ahead and just add a little bit more flour. Okay, I think I have it pretty much where I want it now. You can kind of see it's looks like it's going to be easy to roll out. Okay, the recipe that I found online actually had said to let it sit for 5 minutes or so, but I really haven't found a need for that, so I'm just going to go ahead and get my cutting board ready. Actually, by the time I get everything else ready, it's probably about 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and just set that aside and get my cutting board ready so I can go ahead and roll out my dough. All right, before I start rolling my dough, I want to get some things ready. And the first thing is my oven's already been set for 450, so it's ready to go. It's preheated. And my baking pan, I want to go ahead and put out some non-stick parchment paper. So don't get confused. It's a lot like wax paper, but it doesn't have the wax. So you want to get the parchment paper, put some of that on a pan. And then the other thing I have is I have my cutting board ready. I've got a fork, a brush, because I'm going to brush on some olive oil. I need my rolling pin, and I also use a pizza cutter. If you don't have a pizza cutter, you can just use a knife. That works fine. All right, let's go ahead and start rolling. So the first thing I do to start making the rolling a little bit easier is I kind of, because I want it to be the size of the baking sheet, so I kind of get myself started by kind of patting it out, flatten it out a little bit, and get it in that oblong kind of position. All right, and then the other thing that's helpful is to have a smaller rolling pin, because what I want to do towards the end is I want to be able to roll in my pan to get it any way that I can. So I got my rolling pin, and I'm going to go ahead and just start rolling it out. I do want to get it the size of my baking sheet, so I'm just going to keep rolling any way that I can to just kind of get that to be the shape that I want. I do want it to be fairly thin. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep rolling. Okay, you can see I have it rolled out pretty good here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and transfer this now to my baking sheet. And one thing great about this recipe is it really doesn't stick too bad. You don't want it super thin where you can't even pick it up. But yeah, pretty much you're able to pick this right up and move it into the pan. What I do once I have it in the on the baking sheet is I have a rolling pin that's kind of small, and so I'm just kind of able to continue to just roll it out a little bit more. Okay, so it looks like I've got it about as good as I'm going to get it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my fork now, and I'm just going to kind of poke some holes on it so that it doesn't blow up on me. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put brush some olive oil all over it. Now I'm ready to sprinkle on my seasoning. Again, this is what would make the recipe different from other recipes. You can actually put anything you want. Maybe I would try like some spicy chili and garlic or something, but this is again, the tomato basil garlic, and so I really like this. I'm gonna go ahead and sprinkle that on there pretty generously, making sure that you get all spots because you're gonna cut it up into individual crackers, so you wanna make sure you get it on there pretty well. Okay, and then I also sprinkle on the sesame seed, although it doesn't really stick very well. Okay, and so because the seasoning doesn't really just go into it, it's not infused, I actually might consider adding some of it to the ingredients next time. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna just roll over it a couple times to try and push the seasoning in a little bit. Okay, didn't pick up too much of it, so that's pretty good. Now I'm ready to go ahead and start cutting. So I just kind of start as close to the edge as possible and kind of go all the way down, and I'll slide the paper up if I can to get it a little bit further and just continue to cut. Okay. Now I'm going to cut the other direction. One thing that you might want to do after you've used the pizza cutter is just kind of go back along the edges because those didn't quite reach and kind of cut them. If not, you can always break them apart at the end, so it's not really a big deal. But I'm ready to go ahead and stick this in the oven. All right, they're in the oven. I'm going to go ahead and let them cook for about 13 to 15 minutes. You know, I always try to remember my perfect time for my oven, and I never remember, but I'm gonna just check on them to make sure that they don't burn. Now, one thing is, a lot of times I'll get the ends a little bit thinner than maybe the middle, so the ends might get a little bit toasty, but we're just gonna let it cook and see what happens. All right, so they've been in the oven, the crackers have been in the oven for 13 minutes, and it looks like they are done. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull them out. So I pulled the crackers out of the oven and I let them sit for a couple minutes so that they could cool. And now I'm going to go ahead and break them apart. You can see some of them didn't quite come out to be an inch, different sizes. Oh well, no talent there. But anyways, break them apart. And here where I didn't get the pizza cutter to go all the way to the edge, that's okay. They break apart pretty easily. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and put them on a plate. I like eating these crackers plain, but my husband thinks that they need either some cheese or some dip. But either way, I think they're yummy. So I put them on a plate so you can actually see how many one batch makes. Now these will store for a couple days. Just put them in a Ziploc bag or a container, airtight container, and you can store them. But they're so delicious, you may not want to store them for very long. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.